I guess we're the final panel presentation, and it's our job to speak while you eat. So don't worry about it. We'll speak while you eat. We have some people up here who are going to provide and hopefully bring it home with a local perspective on what we've been talking about this morning on this panel. My name is Bill Napolitano, by the way. I'm the Regional Environmental Planner at Southeastern Regional Planning, SERPIT. I've been there for about 27 years. I've been involved in just about every aspect of environmental planning that you can imagine. Farming and agriculture have always been near and dear to my heart, just as near and dear as open space, water resources, and every other thing that I do, bikeways, things like that. But this is a real opportunity, I think, today to really kind of start off. It's a jumping off point where we can really grasp the future. The speakers today have provided you with some great information. But as I was sitting there, I realized, especially Greg Watson, I had met Greg first more than 30 years ago when he was down at New Alchemy, and I was a student at SMU, one of the local schools. It was SMU then, and we had a faculty-student seminar. And one of the things we did, it was great, 7 professors and 7 students, multidisciplinary. We used to take field trips down to New Alchemy. And, grown if you've heard this, the wave of the future was wind. Renewable energy, renewable building materials. They were talking about anaerobic fermentation, digestion. They were talking about wind power. We were talking about harnessing wave energy with barges and rotating batteries on turbines on barges and sending electricity back to the mainland. We were talking about crops and crop efficiency. We were talking about superior soil. So we didn't have to genetically modify them. We were talking about things that the guys were talking about this morning. Healthy soils to promote healthy crops, to provide healthy food, to promote genetic diversity amongst the crops and the crop seed, things like that. But we were at a desperate time. We were at an inconvenience time, I think, at the end of the 70s, the beginning of the 80s, and inconvenience wasn't enough pain, so we kind of dropped that. We went high-tech, and you see the advantages of that all around you today. But history runs in 30-year cycles, or so I was taught by my history professors in college. Well, we're on the cusp of another 30-year cycle. And at this point in time, I think we hurt. We're hurting a little more as a society. We're realizing in the last 30 years, we've probably lost a lot of farmland. We've lost a little bit of the ability to take care of ourselves, to feed ourselves, to be efficient about things, to be better stewards of the earth. And if this 30-year cycle is coming around again, you're seeing some of these things again and hearing about some of these things again, now is the time to grasp onto it. Now is your moment. Now is your time. The programs that have been spoken about in this room today, they are innovative. They've taken ideas of the past. Maybe they're founded on the past. Maybe, they say on the shoulders of giants. But now is the time to take these programs and run with them. Launch them. Make them part, and I'm going to say this again when I wrap up, part of your core values. And that's where we have to be. Everything that was spoken about today, if it's not part of your core values as a community and on the bigger picture with us as a society, then it's just going to exist. It'll be another idea that exists and goes nowhere. But anyways, I got some great people here. Old friends, it was wonderful to be on the panel. Stephanie Danielson, I've known for years and years. Not as long as I've known Sukaduchi, I've known for decades and decades. But Stephanie is the land use planner in Easton. Stephanie, I've also known as an advocate for watershed protection with the Taunton River Watershed Alliance. Numerous things. She's staffed to the recently established Easton Agricultural Commission, which is great. When I first started, Ag Commission, Sue was the first one back in the late 90s. Now there are over 150 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which shows you we're taking ag a little more seriously. And Stephanie has also had the experience of dealing with food producers and local foods through catering. So she's kind of seen the whole spectrum, and she's got some very interesting things to speak to you about.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon. I get very excited talking about agriculture. It's something near and dear to my heart, local-grown food. I love to eat. I love to eat good food. As Bill mentioned, my family has been in the catering business for a number of years. Bill talked about 30-year cycles, and 30 years ago, when I talk about agriculture, I'd like to start off by mentioning that when I was a young girl, 40 years ago, people didn't buy vegetables from the grocery store in the summer. Because in southeastern Massachusetts, everywhere you turned, there were local farm stands. Whether they were backyard operations or commercial growers, it was readily available. And that's what we grew up on. I also, my family had a garden. So the farm stands augmented what we grew in our garden. And we canned our own food. I also was just mentioning to Bill that I didn't realize at that time that we were on the precipice of almost completely losing agriculture in this area. That, you know, some 40 years later, agriculture was almost becoming extinct, the local farms that you could easily get to. So it was really exciting for me when I started working for the town of Easton to see that there was a real interest locally in bringing back local agriculture. And that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about how Easton, again, when I started working in Easton, there were virtually no farms left producing. There was one old farm family, the Hendersons, and they were just wrapping up their operation and getting ready to retire. So how come it's coming back? And why is there a new focus? Well, the first thing is everybody wanted it. Of course, all the old-timers who remembered what I did, that Easton was at one time a very rural agricultural town with lots of farms, local produce, local products. They wanted to see that come back. They wanted to see a return to what they had experienced. Just as importantly, for those of you who know anything about Easton, we're a new bedroom community. A lot of folks are moving, upwardly mobile people who are working in the city and around the 495 and what used to be the 128 belt are coming to live there. It's a great place to live. They like the local culture, they like the historic character, and they want to preserve it. A lot of communities don't see that. When you get those newcomers coming in, the first thing they want to do, we heard a gentleman over here and also Greg Watson talk about, that, the complaints from neighbors and especially newcomers. We didn't have that. When we did our visioning sessions, we heard from newcomers, young people, some of the more affluent residents, that they wanted to preserve what was there and they wanted to make sure we could bring back agriculture. And the local government wanted it. Everyone was very supportive of these efforts. And a big help, of course, was the big push, thinking globally and more regionally on how important it was to bring back local agriculture, reduce our carbon footprint. There was a real commitment to that. So how did we get started? Because that's always a big thing. You can talk a lot about things. You can just keep figuring out, gee, how are we going to make this happen? It's difficult. Well, one of the first things we started to do, Easton owns over 4,000 acres of open space preserved for permanent protection. One of their largest management areas has over 15 acres of fields that had historically been used for crop production. So we started talking with the Conservation Commission about once again leasing those fields out for production. One of the local realty trusts who had one of the family members for a long time wanted to see organic farming done on one of their holdings, went into a lease with a new farmer that wanted to do organic farming, and that was about 4 years ago. Of course, we had a lot of folks attending professional workshops like this, learning more and more about agriculture, and really coming back with a lot of great ideas. I was one of those. So we really started talking about this and talking to the Board of Selectmen and saying, gee, there's a real opportunity here. Not just to benefit the local residents as far as making local food available, which was a lot more healthy, made people feel good about helping, again, reduce the carbon footprint, that type of thing, but also would create an agricultural economy. And we heard a little bit about that, but I think that's a big area that a lot of people don't realize, that when you have agriculture, it is its own economy, and there's a real benefit there. One of the other facts I'll quote, I was listening to the radio recently, and they were talking about the lament that the number of jobs in Massachusetts that have been lost, this significant area of job loss over the last several years, and it's down 51%, is jobs for teenagers and high school students. Agriculture provides an opportunity for those people in that target employment group. Our local farmer told me, I think she said they hired 50 students last year to work their farm. So the more farms we have, the more opportunities we have there. So what we've accomplished today, one of the holdings the Conservation Commission has is, it's actually a small area. It only has 2 workable areas, 2 workable fields for production, but we've leased out, it has a house and some outbuildings, and we leased that to a couple who want to do what I call a gentleman's farm. It is a couple, I guess it's a gentle person's farm now, and they are growing some crops, they have goats, they have a couple of mules, and they have chickens, and they are selling eggs by the roadside. So that was a big first step. The Board of Selectmen appointed a study committee for an agricultural commission, and in 2011, at annual town meeting, the town voted to establish that agricultural commission. The first thing the agricultural commission did was put together a 5-year work plan. I worked very hard, as Bill mentioned, on staff support for them, and I felt it very important that they actually have a plan laid out. What are we going to do? What are we trying to accomplish? We went to the Board of Selectmen, talked about that. We met with the Board of Health, let them know we were doing this, involved the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission, also the Recreation Commission, because there's a component of agriculture that can actually tie into your recreation. We created a farmland inventory. So we took all the Chapter 61A properties, made a list of those. We used GIS layers to identify where the remaining prime farm soils were and where the larger tracts of land were that were undeveloped. And we have that. The goal for that long-term is going to be to put together an active plan for how we, preserve those lands going forward. That was the intent of the inventory. We adopted a right to farm bylaw last year at town meeting. We had an active subgroup that worked with the local restaurants and the school to bring local produce to their operations. That's an ongoing effort. I was really impressed at the inroads they were able to make this year. We have a new restaurant opening in town, and they have a commitment to purchase locally from one of the local farms. We moved and expanded the farmers market. A whole history about that, I won't go into it, but it had been 14 years running, started off from one farm operation for many, many, many years, grew in vendors, but it had very little visibility and access. So we moved it to a very visible location and expanded the number of offerings there. We've been asked for years if we could provide community gardens in the south side of town. There are community gardens in the north side, and Easton's quite a large community, distance-wise, from one end of town to the other. And this year we'll be offering community gardens at some of our conservation lands on the south side of town. And then again, we had the Conservation Commission formally vote just recently to lease the remaining fields. I've been approached by several farmers over the last 2 years looking for more land and very interested in these fields that we have available. So over the next 6 months, we'll be preparing and going out with an RFP to seek a tenant for those fields. What's next? I think we've accomplished a lot. We're very proud, but we know that we have to continue with this. One of the things we want to do is put a formal agricultural plan together that will help really put the meat on the bones for the preservation plan. Also, kind of identify the food shed, the real opportunities for future development, and the economic the agricultural economy and what that means. And we continue our buy local initiatives. Again, expanding our farmers market. This year we'd like to offer SNAP, EBT, and credit debit cards, and expand the number of vendors. This past winter there was a winter's market, so we want to make sure that that continues. We want to continue working with the local schools and restaurants, but we also want to start talking with the supermarkets about offering more local products. People talked about processing. That's a big issue. So you have the production that's going on, but also how do you keep that going through the winter, the off-season. We'll probably be offering seminars. I heard CMAP offers several workshops. I'm familiar with those. I'm wondering if maybe they'll come and do some specialized ones for us down in Easton. We'd love that. We think that's a big benefit. We don't have any beef or meat production going on, so that's something we'd like to look into. I had understood about the slaughterhouse issue, that's a big challenge. So, we're very supportive of any action that can happen there. So, Jen, really what's happening, we're really just beginning. We've had a great start. We're really looking forward to the future, and we think it's really exciting. Thank you.
If it's okay with everybody, I think what we'll do is we'll hold questions till the end, until after everyone's spoken. All right, next speaker is Sue Guiducci, and like I said, I've known Sue for decades. Sue is with the Dartmouth Ag Commission, but that's not all. I've known Sue as a member of the Bristol County Conservation District, a member of the Resource Conservation Developer Area Council, numerous state advisory committees, and whatever else. And she told me, she said, when I get through speaking, you won't have anything to say, which is probably true because she knows more than just about anybody in here. So, Sue.
It's really a pleasure to be here today, and I can't believe the turnout with the type of weather that we're facing. But that being said, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on how the Dartmouth Agricultural Commission came to be. For those of you, how many people are here in towns that don't have AgComs? Okay, there's all right, that's quite a few. The AgCom, in terms of promoting agriculture on a town level, is extreme. I can't emphasize how important it is. In 1987 and 88, we had the illustrious reputation through a study done by American Farmland Trust called Losing Ground, of being the community that was losing ag land to residential development, the fastest growing. I originally came from Queens, that's New York, Flushing to be specific, home of the Mets. So when I visited the South Coast, I was completely taken aback. I spent most of my adolescent career trying to get to a beach or trying to spend time in the mountains or in farm country. And when I came here, you didn't have the mountains, but you definitely had the beaches and the farmland, and I was blown away. In the 90s, when I first met Greg Watson, in Dartmouth, they were losing dairies at an extraordinary rate. We used to boast over 200 farms in town, and by the time I got involved with the AgCom, we were below 50. So in 87 and 88, the town had a master planning process, which I'm sure Bill was involved with, and there had also been a land use study. On his land would be houses. So in 80s, when they did the master plan, there was someone who had a vision that decided that the town needed to have what was then called an Agricultural Development Commission. And there was that was a tremendous foresight on their part. because we don't have to deal with struggles that some communities are going through now in order to establish an AdCom or a right to farm bylaw. Not that they did that, the right to farm back then, but they were forward thinking enough to establish the AdCom for us before it was even a thing to do. So Dartmouth and Amherst are vying for position for who was there first, but you know how I probably weigh in on that. When we started the Agricultural Commission in the early 90s, we didn't know what we were dealing with. We just didn't know what to do. We tried to get the Department of Food and Ag then to sort of pay attention, and how do we work together to save farmers and farmland. And it was moving so quickly that no one knew what to do. We were all volunteers. We didn't know, we had no power to speak of, and we kind of just got lost in our own, we just got muddled, and we kind of stepped back for a while. It took someone that had been born and raised in the community to come back in 1997 and say, holy mackerel, look at this place is starting to look totally different. It doesn't look like the town I grew up in. And from that, we started to mobilize the Ag Commission again, and it pretty much is what it is today. We focus somewhat on farmer advocacy. Our motto is preserving farmland and supporting farmers. We do a lot of the work that Stephanie talked about in terms of farmland inventory. We've done farmer surveys to give us direction as to where we might want to go. We try to work with the farm to school program to make sure that the schools are feeding some of the students on produce that's grown in town. We did this brochure, and I apologize, it's seriously outdated at this point. So what I would strongly urge is that when and if you do establish an AdCom, which you really need to do, you need to work with all of the boards in town that will impact agriculture or promote agriculture in the case of the high school, that they start to learn about their agricultural heritage. We did the right to farm bylaw. We worked with MDAR and also the federal government on the protection of properties in town and land trust, both local and regional. Part of our right to farm bylaw includes the conflict resolution, which we get heavily involved with in terms of odors or issues. We've worked with Donald Perry, who's our town planner here today, on the zoning bylaws as they affect agriculture. We collaborate with the planning department and the Board of Health and the building department, and that involves work with both MDAR and DPH. And we try to do our best in terms of outreach and education. We are truly the grassroots, and we try to be involved in as many places as we can to promote agriculture and to make sure that our farms stay profitable. A strong AdCom, in the end, we have experienced that it attracts young farmers. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the statistics, but we are part of a aging farmers, and if we don't get enough young people to come in and take over, we're going to just lose that traction in terms of food production. Having an AdCom also, it's part of the Commonwealth Capital application when you're going for APR funding. So they actually have a checklist. So if you have an AdCom, it's check. If you have a farmer's market, it's check. If you have a right to farm bylaw, it's check. So the more checks you have, the more leveraging power that you have to be able to preserve some of your farmland. So as you can see, we have a lot of partners. And I think a lot of people have heard me say this before, that the more partners that are in the room, although it gets a little complicated at times, that's pretty much your strength. That we work on the local level so that with the Board of Health, we deal with odor issues or rooster issues, if you've heard about those, and I know a lot of people have. And then we have this, and everybody's talking about value added and how important that is to providing just another element of profit to farmers. And we certainly promote that in any way we can. We're fortunate in that our local Grange has included as part of their plan a shared use commercial kitchen, which we now have that can be rented by the hour, like you rent by the hour, and you can be a farmer or a small business that comes in and does some type of food processing. So we've accomplished a lot, and we still have a lot more to go. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the slaughtering issue, and that's becoming a very hot button topic. We're lucky enough, we have a new farmer in town. Actually, we have, since we've become attractive because of our strength in the AdCom world, we've attracted, I'm going to say, a total of at least 6 new farmers, which is, I think that's a great track record. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of them have come to farm or are interested in farming in Dartmouth because of the activities that we're involved with and we promote. But to get back to the slaughtering issue, we now have a pastured poultry operation in town that is, they went through a total of 2,500 birds this past season. That's their first year out. So I think that's a huge success on their part, but as of late, they are now facing some issues that deal with, they slaughter on site. And we've pretty much been sitting with them at the table to work through the issues so that they're not beholden to what they're calling commercial regulations, that there's got to be some latitude in terms of a new startup farm, that they can't go out and put in a $30,000 septic system to handle waste from a sink or a hand washing sink in the processing unit. So we're struggling with some of these issues, but as you heard from Representative Schmidt, that there's a bill, and I believe it's 1220 that's before the House, dealing with some of these plumbing code issues that would help this couple tremendously if the regulatory side were placed in the hands of MDAR versus the plumbing department or the plumbing board. So that's where we leave it. The only thing that I would probably like to see moving ahead would be a collaboration with UMass and sustainability as far as exploring some possibilities for biomass and for fiber. So that's kind of a comment and a challenge. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. Well, I'll wrap it up, but it was very interesting. When you put something together, you usually come to conferences with PowerPoints or some props or something. I decided to go really old school. I'm not going to wheel out the overhead projector or the slide carousel, the mylars and the markers. I'm going even older school than that. And it just worked out really well today that we had a great historical perspective starting off with Greg Watson's talk. And we kind of went through the whole litany of things, all the things that we offer, all the programs that we have, all the human resources, the people in the programs too. There are some great contacts in this room. And everybody has kind of intimated that it's all about partnerships. It's how we work together. Unfortunately, a lot of times, we really don't know what we're doing. I mean, as far as we have great groups doing individual things, running programs, putting on seminars, and everybody gets juiced, and everybody comes home and they want to do something. But they've heard about another group at this seminar and say, how do I make a contact? And a lot of times, well, now we can Google. Again, going back to the tech thing, now we can Google and find out who's where and what. But you don't know about the intimacy, the spirit, the partnership, the cooperation. I'll get back to core values. One of the things about agricultural commissions is they were created to be integrated into local government again. Why? Because when we first started back in the 1700s, when some of us were children, we started getting really active in local government, the farmers were at the table. The farmers were in control of the community. They were pretty much, it was what it was all about. It was the occupation. You farmed. Life depended upon you being efficient, productive, diligent, fighting the land, working with the land, coming up with better ways to do things, to produce more, to meet the demands of growing populations. And that's where agricultural commissions should be today. That's much more than a 30-year cycle, by the way. But that's where agricultural commissions should be today. And that's why they were created. You'll always hear about, well, they were created to help resolve disputes between neighbors and farms, or to get nuisance lawsuits dismissed. That's fine, and Sue is absolutely right. Ag commissions coming in, working in an advisory capacity with government, with planners, with health agents, with boards of public works. These are people, I know in my community, the way we set it up, you have to be a practicing agriculturalist to have one of the 5 seats. You can be one of the 3 associate members if you have an interest in agriculture. I got on there because I have an interest in agriculture. I'm a professional planner. It's worked out well. But we have an aquaculturist, a vegetable farmer, a cranberry farmer, a poultry farmer, and a horse farmer. So, I mean, the Board of Health and the Animal Control Officer and the Planning Board and whoever else, if one of these people can't answer a question for them, and if one of them doesn't know every other agriculturalist in town, it's rare. And they've had the opportunity to go out and help prevent disputes, help correct misunderstandings, help interpret the law, help the town government understand how agricultural laws were created and how they should be applied. And that's one of the things. One of the other things I do, and I was talking to some of the folks in the room about this before, and Steph in particular, because we were talking about land use planning. I've had a chance to do a lot of open space plans over there, conservation, open space, and recreation plans, master plans. And you always see the community surveys. And moan if this was the top response in your town. We want to conserve the local, rural qualities and character of the town. Number 1 response in the survey. And you say, okay, local, rural qualities, that's great. And then you look at the choices. What's important to you as an individual? Water and water resources, water supply, rivers and streams, habitat, athletic fields, at the end, keeping farms, 4.2%. So I said, so you want to preserve, and they always lump these together, open space and agricultural lands, but practicing agriculture is down here. Well, I'm going to let you in on a secret. We're all here today because what we want to do is not only preserve agricultural lands, but preserve the practice of agriculture on those lands. If we do not preserve the practice of agriculture on those lands, we won't have farms. Which brings me to my first prop, and I love it. It's not a farm without farmers. I worked with a guy from North Carolina. He came up here a few years ago, and I showed him this bumper sticker, and he said, can I have 12 of those to send to relatives and friends in North Carolina? I said, you sure can. And I said, just tell them it's a Massachusetts initiative. So it's not a farm without farmers, which means we really have to be committed as an agricultural commission. You should strive to be more. We don't create commissions and programs merely to exist. If we do that, then they're paper. They're nothing. They're a pass-through. It's a ceremonial seat. We have to create programs that not only exist, but programs that people could not exist without. We want people to want us. Why? Because we're effective, we're efficient, we're lean, mean, we've integrated with other departments in our local government. We go out, we serve our constituency, the practicing agriculturalists. We really have to do that. We work with the regional planning agency. We work with our universities. This is what we have to do. Collectively, everybody in the room, the resources in this room, I'm looking around, are tremendous. This is why we have to maybe focus on sustainability through a university and satellite programs. I'm going to get to some of the other ones because there's some really interesting ones in this room. So what do? How can you support farmers? Well, we're talking about local zoning, bylaws, rules, regulations. come up with things that support the local farm economy. I'm looking at Steve. Remember the Vision 2020 about back at the turn of the century? Isn't that weird to say? At the turn of the century, we did the Vision 2020 study, and it said that in southeastern Massachusetts, one of the 6 top economic engines, see I'm trumping Greg Watson here, one of the 6 top economic engines was agriculture, and it came in at number 3. And this is during the time of the tech boom, the housing boom, the business boom, and people used to look at us and we say, agriculture is the number 3 economic engine now. Wow, I'd like to eat what you guys are eating or drinking. Where do you get that from? And then you hit them with statistics. And why do you hit them with statistics? Because if you want programs going to perpetuate and propagate agriculture, you need to know that there is a need. And everybody always says, that's another one of the misconceptions, you create programs not to exist, but, they can't exist without. And everybody says, don't become a statistic. Well, you know what, you guys? Everybody in this room who's been asked to take an agricultural survey today, please become a statistic. Because they will not know that you are out there. They will not know what needs you have. They will not know how many of you there are, how many acres of land there are still in active agriculture. You have to let people know. Greg Watson has to know. Paul Schmidt, who I agree with Steve, is great farmer, great guy, beautiful farm. But I'm going to say Representative Paul Schmidt has to know what those numbers are if he's going to promote agricultural legislation effectively. And he's going to need all of us to help him. Of course, what's at the heart of keeping local farms, and local ag practice? This is one of my favorites. Buy fresh, buy local. You got to love that. And you know what? It's true. It goes back, if you buy fresh, buy local, everybody's been talking about genetically modified products today. Well, it gets back to the practice of agriculture. If we can keep the local ag economy going, we have vital soils. We have fresh soils. Fresh soils produce fresh crops, fresh and healthy. Fresh and healthy crops go to our schools, our homes, wherever, our markets. And you know what else it does? It retains genetic diversity of the crops. Farmers know how to work with the land, use the land. If you can give them, the big thing was equal access to long-term low-interest capital. That was always the big thing in the 70s and 80s. Well, that still exists. Everybody needs that. But if you give them the opportunity to practice with some of the enhanced techniques we've come up with now, they can retain, just what you're doing there, they can retain good, local, healthy soils. And that's the basis of farmland. And that's why when everybody says you want to preserve farmland and agricultural soils, that's even with the state. Executive Order 193, the state will not take part in any project on state land that creates a loss of agricultural soils. Prime agricultural soils or agricultural soils of statewide importance. Why? Because they are important. That's our future. That's our ability to feed ourselves and really meet the needs of our communities. So what do? Let's help people find farmland. I agree with Stephanie and Sue. There are people out there looking for farmland. I'm the regional environmental planner. I get calls from farmers. Do you know where I can get farmland? I've been working with a guy for 2.5 years to find a dairy farm that's suitable for him. He's Native American. He came from Connecticut originally. He was into poultry, vegetables, and dairy when he was young. He would love at this point in his life when he's into his retirement is he wants to get back into dairy. And I said, Gary, you're a tougher man than me. But he wants to do it. So what do? We have things like got farmland, looking for farmland. Well, New England Farm Links, there's a number of programs. Tufts, CMAP, go to the CMAP website. There is farmland available. We should put people who want to farm in contact with people who have farmland. Especially, as Sue said, where with these successional farms, they're dying out. The older generation, they don't have heirs, or there aren't people to step in and find the farms. Maybe we can find lease options for these people. Maybe we can find working options, management options. But let's do it. The other thing is farm to school. Somebody mentioned that. Sue, I think it was. It's been a good program. It can be more efficient. How can it be more efficient? You agricultural commissions, step up there and let these guys know where the local farms are, who the local producers are, what they produce, and let's start with food generated in the local community, go into our government offices and our schools. If that doesn't work, then look outside and you'll go to the next town over, the neighbors. Be aware of where you are and what you have. That will make that program so efficient. But just as a statistic, last year there were 114 farms that direct marketed their food to 231 school systems, which isn't bad. But we can get more out there. We can do better. One of the other things, how can we do better? This comes from Farm to School too. Preferential buying legislation. It's consistent with the Uniform Procurement Act, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B. Right now, Amherst, you can go, I won't read all this, go on and Google it. Amherst, Cambridge, and East Hampton have great models. And it's for produce, providing local produce to their municipal and school buildings in the amounts of $25,000 or more. So, I mean, so it's a big process, but you can do it. The other thing to tie into Mr. Cooper's talk about organic composting, DEP is going to get involved, Well, I got to pump up our friends at BCC. They have an organic farming program. I hope everybody grabbed this out there. They have an organic farming program. When they're looking for places to put on these workshops, wouldn't it be great if you came into BCC and said, here's what the state's promoting, here's what you can use, and then get these guys to say, here's how you can use it. Again, it's cooperative, it's partnerships, it's knowing what your resources are and how to use them. It's the local schools, community colleges, junior colleges. I mean, you've heard it in the national initiative. Let's not perpetuate the disconnect, let's make the connection. Everybody says this is where you're going to get your jobs and your skills and your training in the two-year schools. Well, here it is. This is really unusual. This is very unique. Let's promote it. Let's get DEP. Let's get another arm of state government in there to work. Another thing, farm to energy programs. Farm to energy programs. You mentioned that. I was with the RC&D, the Pilgrim RC&D Area Council, for 25 years. I was the president for 15. I loved it. Got to work with a lot of farmers, a lot of great people. This is Berkshire Pioneer, RC&D. They started the Farm to Energy program, just like, I have to say, because I'm so proud of it. CMAP started out of a Pilgrim RC&D initiative, so did the Mass Association of Agriculture on the farm, so the farmers can reinvest in the farm to keep the practice of farming on farmland viable, active, attractive, the whole bit. One of the other things that wasn't mentioned today, go to the MDOT website too. Greg Watson's MDOT website is an unbelievable source of information. And one of the things I like to go to is the MDOT law memos. Something happened a couple of years ago, and Serpent was loosely affiliated with this because it was one of our commissioners who initiated this. Carol Bragg from Seacon, working with then State Representative Steve D'Amico, got agriculture and agricultural practice down to 2 acres. 5 acres or more, you're eligible for the Chapter 61, the tax abatement programs. But now, 2 acres to 5 acres, you're eligible for technical assistance because you can be recognized as a farm based on how much you produce per year. $1,000 per acre. But guess what? In your local bylaws, and it's right in this memo, this is right online, you can lower that limit to $500 a year if it's more palpable for your local farmers and easier to work with as a local government. And what's good about that? I ran into some of my friends from the USDA at Bridget's annual conference a couple of weeks ago. I was there. And I just kind of sidled up to him because he's at a table, and I said, isn't it great to see all these people out there? I recognize so many farmers and small farmers. And he goes, you know what's really cool? I'm out there providing technical assistance to a lot of these people right now. I thought, well, that's what you do. He goes, no. There's a lot of 2 and 3 acre farmers out there that I've been working with, and I'm so glad to see that they're here at a local food conference, because that's what it's all about, increasing our ability, our productivity, our food security. I mean, if you don't have to truck it, Father, the whole bit. I mean, he was getting into everything. I said, thank you. And I just, a nice smile for Steve D'Amico and Carol Bragg, and it was great that as a Serpent commissioner, she used us and worked with us. And finally, I know I'm sorry I went on way too long, but this is one of my favorite ones. I gotta get my last prop. Get fresh with a local farmer. Now, you guys at Farm Bureau, I don't know who came up with this motto, and I don't really know if it has anything to do with local food and local food production. But I think if you put that great, it's not farmland without farmers, buy fresh, buy local, and then get fresh with a local farmer. Does life get any better than this? This is what it's all about. These are the most important things, and these are the things you really have to carry away from here. The most important resource in this room today was the human resource. It was your interest in attending. Hopefully it will be your interest in getting involved and really going out there and juicing things in the community. Again, if you're involved in a program, make it a program that we can't live without, not just a program that exists. If you want to bring these resources in, invite these people into your classrooms, your colleges, your town halls, your public meetings, your seminars. Let's get everything out there, and let's try to stay in touch more as a community, as an agricultural community, because there are so many moving parts in this agricultural community. Times are tough. We have to be lean, mean, efficient, and the only way we can do it is to stay in touch and network. And I personally, I'd like to thank everybody who came here today to speak, or attend, or whatever, and so we'll open up for questions. Briefly, I don't know how much time we have.
Where can you get those bumper stickers?
You can get them from CMAP, Buy Fresh, Buy Local. CMAP has tons of those. In fact, you got some out there. Got some out there. These come from the
That one and the green one.
American Farmland Trust, and the green one, Get Fresh with the Local Farmers, the Farm Bureau. The greatest, most unrecognized, unknown, and underutilized resources in southeastern Massachusetts has its headquarters in Seekonk, and that's the Mass Ag in the Classroom program. They can arrange for teachers and schools to come out and do farm tours with farmers. It's been the same place and the same person running it for years. Go to the website. They have a conference coming up for teachers. I think it's out in Ludlow. But it's absolutely fabulous. Get the kids out on the farms. Show them where the local produce is coming from. I mean, it would be wonderful to meet a... Pardon?
It's Saturday.
It's this Saturday. There you go. All right.
And Bill, I'd like to add my own personal anecdote to that. All of you, children, grandchildren, I've been taking my children and now my grandchildren with me to the Pick Your Own for years.
Yes.
And part of the process is not just the benefit of the fresh grown, gee, isn't this great, it's wonderful. It's teaching them respect for the fields, respect for the trees that we're picking from, and an explanation. This is someone's livelihood. This is what someone does to make a living so we can have fresh food. Your daddy goes out, he builds homes. This is what someone else does. And when the satisfaction I got, you just can't imagine. When this past summer, she's 10 years old now, and we went back out. We go to C.N. Smith to do our Pick Your Own, and we've been going for years. And she looked at me, and we're walking around. She goes, Nani, when I'm old enough, I want to work here. And to be able to say, I can get you a job here.
There you go.
I'm going to reiterate what Bill said. Mass Ag in the Classroom is a tremendous resource. You also, the teachers can get professional development credits for attending the conference. They have a grant program, that I worked with them for an after-school program at the middle school. We just grew vegetables and then served it at the after-school program. There are a lot of things you can do to get involved. There's a Sheffield Land Trust had a program where they had one day where the farmers met with the students willing students at the high school to do a match for summer employment. So there are a lot of things that folks can do, working with a regional land trust. Is everybody here from Bristol County?
Bristol County?
So everybody knows we have an agricultural high school in Dighton. Wildly popular, seats for 400 students or incoming class of 100, and they have 4 times as many applications. What a resource there is there. So it's, a matter of connecting middle school guidance with the guidance program at the Aggie.
Not only that, Bristol Aggie, they talk about just agricultural high school, again, on the cutting edge. They're doing a turtle propagation program with other states. They're doing a fisheries program now. They do some unbelievably clever, creative, cutting-edge environmental programs, all tying into agriculture too, and sound management practices.
They may not be doing that much in sustainable agriculture these days.
Can I speak to that?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm very involved with trying to collaborate with the high school personally. I think that, I'm not saying I'm getting anywhere, I'm just saying I'd like to see us go in that direction. I think what you're saying is correct, that you need to somehow voice your opinion either to the Board of Trustees as far as the possibility of starting to grow or raise food there. In defense of the removal of the orchard, it became an issue with pesticide application, and that's why they removed the orchard. Hearing Steve say this is huge as far as, for me, spirit-wise, because 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we sat at a table talking about trying to co-op dairies because we didn't know any other way to try to add value to what they were doing instead of just selling their milk off to a co-op. And I got the thumbs down from Steve and his brother because it was like, you are wasting your time. And now he has come. This is the 30-year cycle.
In defense of that, at the time to do it, a lot of these guys are not, you know, when you were talking about that thing, a lot of us were not in that shape to say, hey, look, I'm willing to go for it. We had, you know, okay, we weren't getting nothing for our product, but we had a check coming in every 2 weeks ago, and our farms were on the lifetime. What I'm seeing now is a lot of guys that are farming that maybe they got a pension coming from somewhere, or maybe they got a good job and they're doing it on the weekend, and maybe it's not the full-scale farming that it's working, but it's a start. It's a way to go. I just got a guy that just retired from the union as an operator. You know, he's up Charlie Tangerini. I don't know if you guys know him. Great farmer, just retiring. I got another guy just bought new equipment off me, retiring from UPS. But guess what? They're not hobby farming. They're not playing raising 6 heifers or playing with 5 acres. These guys are doing 50, 60, 70, 80 acres. So, you know, a lot of these guys, I used to call them, I got one of my dairy customers, I call him a 4-H project on steroids. You know, the guy started raising heifers, and guess what? Now he's producing milk every day. So there's success stories out there, and it's got a lot to do with this type of day. Networking, marketing, and marketing's the secret. Marketing's the secret. Take that value-added product, get the public educated, especially, I mean, I thank the Food Network every day. You know, and I like to cook, and maybe I'm a Food Network junkie, but I think it's opened up that whole genre of farm to table and farm to restaurant. I worked for Russell Family Farms for about 7-8 years, and I saw a lot of, you know, collaboration with wineries and restaurants and farmers with restaurants, and it's all starting to work. And I think it's all moving in the right direction.
Claude, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I like to come last, as you see.
You've been managing to do this with every speaker. It's a good thing.
Steve actually made me 35 years younger. He said I was his generation, so he's a little bit off the
I
bat.
thought that was by selling you a good tractor yesterday.
There you go. Well, you know what? This is such a positive message to leave on. Let's take the positivity and get it out there and keep this thing going. Thank you all for coming. Susan, you want to- Be safe. Going on. Be safe.